Hi, friends and family,
Welcome to Hope After Addiction
with your hosts, Katie Comer.
and Chelsea McLeod. Hey friends, we're so glad you're here with us today. Today's a big day. We're going to get into Katie's testimony that is so,
Woo-hoo!
yes,
Yay.
life-giving. I know years ago when I met her, it gave me a lot of hope and life, and I know it's going to do the same for you today. So we're so excited for her vulnerability and willingness to share.
Yeah.
So take it, Katie.
Yeah, I love sharing my testimony. I, like a lot of times when we get asked to share our testimonies, I don't know if it's like this for you, but they'll be like, all right, I want you to share your life testimony with Adam, and you got 5 minutes, go. And I'm like, okay, let me see what God taught me. But this is such a great time that I can really dive in a little deeper about what God's taught me over so many years and what he's still continuing to teach me and teaching others. So I'm really excited. I'm
Me
excited
too.
to share just where God has brought me. So it's interesting because we just got done last week listening to your testimony, which was so powerful. It really was. I had heard your testimony, like I said, but I had not heard the depths of it. And we were talking about this, about how even though you have the same story of addiction, and I can draw similarities between the two. I'm like, yeah, girl, I remember that. I know how that felt. All this, I know that. But how different our beginning was. And I'm like I don't have any of that. And I'll get into that here in a second, but I'm in awe of the person that you are. Because of, even though you went through some of the stuff, especially when you were little, not just with John, but that you were little, still turned out the way seeking God. Because honestly, I mean, I pray that I would have been the same way, but I don't know. And I have friends like that in college who had hard family lives, but they are on fire for the Lord Jesus. And so if you're listening to this, just know that there's a value in that, even though you have been through something so hard, especially even when you were little. God can use you in such powerful ways. So just kind of hone in on that. But a little bit about me. Just know that I did not have that story. I was a pastor's kid, and I loved being a pastor's kid. I was the goody two-shoe pastor's kid. I did everything right. I mean, not everything, but a lot of things right. I just didn't have a lot of testimony other than accepting the Lord as my Savior, leading up to the hard stuff with Adam. I mean, God taught me even in that time, but I did not have a lot of the hard stuff. So saying that, I had really great parents. They loved me. They still love me. They're some of my best friends even today. I love my family. I have 2 sisters, younger sisters, and we are all just very close and love the Lord, all of us. And so that's a little bit of background where I was. I didn't see a lot of the world. I was sheltered a little bit, not too much. But I mean, I maybe saw alcohol in high school twice. And if somebody was smoking a cigar, I was like, you're going to hell. So, I mean, that's just kind of how I felt. I mean, obviously now I know that there's so much bigger issues. And so, but that's kind of where I came from. And in high school, I dated a guy named Adam Comer. Some of you may know him, sweetheart. We dated in high school, most of high school, and a little bit about Adam. If you don't know him, he's kind of the life of the party. Everybody likes Adam, and in high school especially so. Everybody liked him, and he knew everybody, and he was a part of different groups. You know how there's cliques in high school. He was a part of different groups in high school that everybody liked him. And so he had a lot of friends. I had a lot of friends, I would say, especially starting off through Adam, and then they became some of my closest friends in high school. So that gives you a little bit about who we are and where we came from. And so, yeah, we fell in love in high school. But in college, we did break up because I wanted to see what other fish were in the sea, right? But I didn't like what I saw. So I swam back to him. He did pursue me through most of college, even though we both dated people. And so I felt pursued.
Yeah.
And I knew that that's who I wanted to marry. And so, yeah, everything was so good. I was like, this is it. I said I do. And here we go. We're going to get a house. We're going to have kids. And this is our life together. And God is so good, right?
Yeah.
And so that's just kind of where I fell in that moment. And so I would say a little bit into our marriage, not much into our marriage, maybe 6 months, I would say. I just was like, I don't really feel like this is the white picket fence. I don't really feel like this is what it's supposed to feel like. And what I'm saying is there was certain things that kind of caught me off guard. Money was missing. I felt like our bank account should be more than it is. He should be bringing home a lot more than what he was working, right?
Oh, yeah.
He was hiding his cell phone. Like, he would never let me see his cell phone. One thing, he was coming home really late at night, if not in the morning. And I was like, I don't feel like this is right. And so when I'm looking at that, I know that you all are listening to this podcast in the whole like addiction realms. You're like, yeah, girl, yeah, that's exactly how they are.
Yep.
But when I don't know anything about addiction, I'm like, he is having an affair on me. That is what is happening.
Yeah.
And so I had made up my mind that he was having an affair. And so I approached him, and I remember to this day where he was like hanging stuff up in the closet. And I go, I just need to confront you about something. I just need you to be honest, and we can work through it. But are you having an affair? And he like whipped his head around. He was like, is that what you think? And I said, I mean, these are the things that I'm getting from you. This is the only thing that I can feel like that's the truth. And he was like, I would never have an affair with you or on you. I would never do that to you. You're the only girl I've ever loved. How could you ever think that? And I'm like, okay, sorry. Yeah. So I kind of left it alone. I went away confused still, saying, well, maybe we just need some marriage counseling and that's going to fix it. But it was a couple of days later that he was sitting on the bed, and he was like, I'm tired of hiding.
Yeah.
And I need to come forward. And I was like, here it goes. He's going to tell me about this affair. We'll work through it. We're going to go to counseling. We'll make it work. We'll do this. And so he told me that he started taking some pills for pain for his back a few years before into our marriage. And I had no idea. I mean, I never knew he took anything. And this was into our marriage at this point, to where it was affecting other things like the money, like being irritable. I don't know if I mentioned that, like all this stuff. So he's like, I can't get off of them myself. I've tried. And I remember specifically one time, hindsight, he was trying to detox himself and his stomach was hurting. And I was like, Pepto-Bismol works great.
Girl, same story here.
Really?
The Imodium, it'll be fine. It's a stomach bug.
I mean, you're fine.
Yes.
It's a stomach bug. I mean, and that Pepto went everywhere. I think that those carpets are still stained with Pepto. I mean, honestly. So he was trying himself. He realized he had an issue, but he was trying to deal with it himself. He knew that there was a problem, but finally he told me, and I was like, it's fine. You have come clean.
Yes.
We are good to go. So what you need to do, show me those pills. And so he showed me the pills that he had. He said, let's go over to the toilet and flush them.
Yes. Yes.
And that's all it took. In my mind, I was like, let's have a ceremony, if you will.
Yes.
Flushing the pills down the toilet. We're done. Right? I thought that's all it took. Him confessing and him repenting and him moving on with life. Now let's have babies. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And so he was like, yeah, I'm good now. I feel good. But we all know that that's not the end of the story. And, you know, it just really kept spiraling worse and worse. as you know, I started noticing other things. He was, more money was missing car payments, all this stuff. And I confronted him. I said, baby, I think you need more help than I can give you, more than a toilet flush, right? So he did. He went, kind of like John, he went to a 12-step program, went to like an outpatient program. He went to an inpatient program, a 30-day program. I was so supportive. I was there every time the doors were open. I was there for every family meeting. Yeah. He got out of the 30-day program, inpatient 30-day program, if you will. And we took a little trip up to the cabin, a little romantic getaway. And I was like, he is free from addiction. And so, I was just convinced. But later I found out that he was using that same day he got out. And I was so oblivious, but yet I believed in his freedom, right? Yeah. And so it got worse, and that's kind of typically what happens if they relapse. They get a little worse, not all the time, but sometimes it happens, and it did for him, and he was just so bad. Yeah. And he ended up staying. I left him. And he began staying on friends' couches. I warned him. I said, you don't give him any money. Yeah. Don't do it. And burnt some of those bridges. And he was all alone because I had left. At that point, I'd finally told all my friends and family, which is a huge deal. He had no friends anymore. All of his friends that just thought he was the best guy in the world saw what was going on and finally did something to push him out. Yeah. He was staying with his parents, but he was not able to stay inside the house unless it was like at nighttime. He was kicked out of the house, staying on the porch. So he had nobody. He was literally almost homeless. And he decided, you know what? I need to go back to my roots. I need to go back to what I know. And he was born into a Christian family as well, so he knew the truth. And so he just typed in Christian rehabs in Google, and S2L popped up. Yeah. And he said, you know what? He told me, he was like, I'm going to try this because I feel like this is my last resort. And I said, all right, good luck. And I said, bye. I didn't take him to S2L. I said, I don't know if he asked me if I was going to stick around. I said, I don't know. Yeah. I said, I am over it. And I've stuck around way too long, in my opinion. Yeah. So he went. His parents dropped him off what he thought was a 30-day rehab in Middle Tennessee. When he got dropped off, they go, yeah, so you'll be here for 90 days. And he goes, what? And his parents were like, bye, see ya, don't call us. Yeah. So, it was such a God thing. I didn't know any of this. I just said, I don't want to hear about it. He went to rehab at S2L thinking and expecting divorce papers in the mail. I told him I couldn't give him an answer if I was going to be around, but just be expecting papers because that's where my heart's at. So, yeah, it got that bad.
Can I ask you how your parents and his parents, walked through that with you guys and supported you or not supported you?
Yeah, so his parents are great. They supported me in whatever decision was best for me.
That's awesome.
They obviously wanted me to stay,
of course.
Just because they felt like that was the right thing. But they understood if it wasn't for me. So I think they were there. My parents was really a lot the same. Yeah. But at the same time, you can imagine that they're hurting. He was hurting their baby girl. Yeah. And we had conversations with my pastor from the church about what we need to do. And we just decided to not communicate with Adam while he was in rehab. And I think that was the best thing for me, is just to not make a decision at that time. So they supported me and they were angry with him at the time. Yeah. But it was a hard road in that moment with them for sure.
Yeah. Okay, you go ahead. I
No,
just had
yeah.
to ask that
No,
because
I
I know that's
appreciate
a
that.
big one.
Yeah, it is such a big one. And
Yeah.
so I'm excited to tell you about it afterwards too.
Yes.
So, um, so yeah, I mean, so he was there. I had decided to make the conscious decision not to talk to him through this process. I was so mad at him.
Yeah, same.
I was so mad at him, and I just was like, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can do it. I remember feeling so alone.
Yes.
And that's why we created this podcast, honestly, is so that you don't feel as alone. But I remember going through, and I think I said this on the very first podcast, going through the bookstores and trying to find something to help me decide if I needed to stay with my husband or not.
Yeah.
Just tell me an answer. You know, like I just need somebody to say, you've walked through this, so tell me what I need to do and help me feel like I'm not the only one dealing with a husband who's a liar.
Yep.
You know, he's
That's
just
right.
a liar. So, so he was in rehab. I would say the first month I did not communicate with him. And I remember laying in bed, and he finally got some sort of cell phone. I don't remember how they did it back then, but he was out of this blackout period. I think they have a blackout period. They still do. And so he was out of his blackout period. I still didn't want to talk to him. He would call me. I didn't want to talk. But finally, after 3 or 4 weeks, I finally talked to him. And I remember laying in my bed talking to him. And you said it too. It's just the weirdest thing, y'all.
Crazy.
I mean, it's just the weirdest thing. His voice was different. Like, it was just like the Holy Spirit had invaded his life.
And these.
Yes.
Like,
yeah. And I didn't see him.
That's
so
true.
I didn't see him
Voice.
yet. But it's just his voice.
You can tell.
Yeah. I was like, and I mean, I didn't want to believe it. I still was like super guarded.
Yeah.
But I mean, I remember laying in bed going, he was saying all the right things. He was like, Katie, there is something different. And God has completely transformed my life.
Ooh, that's good.
And like, I know I'm different, Katie. And I said, well, that's great. Okay. Well, we'll see you later. Like, I was so done.
Yeah.
But like, I was like, but I did notice it in his voice. And so, so he, so he was just something different was there. I knew it. And this brings me to the moment where I had to make a decision. I remember driving down Kingston Pike in Knoxville, Tennessee, if you're from there, and listening. I remember driving down Kingston Pike, and I cried out to God, and I said, God, if you want me to stay in this relationship, I will choose to chase hard after you and choose to use my story for your glory. But if you choose not to save my marriage, I'm going to be okay. And I'm going to choose to follow hard after you, and I'm going to choose to use your story for your glory. I remember having that conversation on Kingston Pike, y'all, remembering it was probably a month or two into his recovery. And I also remember, and Carl will put this picture up here in a second, but it's a picture of me being on the floor of my parents, because I'd moved in with my parents at the time. The floor of one of their extra bedrooms. I was on my knees, and I was crying out to God in that same way, just asking God to save Adam, and not knowing what that meant. And it was, I call it the picture of total surrender, because in that moment I was totally surrendered to what God was going to do in my life. And I didn't know what that looked like. I just know I was so mad at him. I couldn't even hardly talk. But I sensed something was different. So that's kind of where I was. I was okay if it didn't work out. I was okay if it did, because I knew God had my back, right?
Yeah.
So I remember one of my favorite things, and I told this story to a group of ladies at my church, and God was so kind to bring this story. I had forgotten about it. I had completely forgotten about it, but I was at a church work day, back in Knoxville, and I was sitting there working, and this woman named Ann, she was this lady. She's one of my mom's friends, and she said, "Where's Adam been? No, where has he been? Because he'd been gone for a couple months now." And I said, he's not doing well, and we're not doing well. I said, I kind of just told her the background, of gist of it.
Yeah.
She didn't know the depths of it, but she just knew enough. And we were working in the dirt, planting flowers, and she just looked up at me and she goes, "What if you gave him one more chance?"
Whew.
That one sentence changed the trajectory of my life.
Because she had just, I think she was doing some like landscaping with her church, with a group, and there was a woman there that told her, "What if you give him one more chance?" What would happen if you gave him one more chance?
What if
Whoa.
I gave him one more chance? And I didn't know it at the time. And I said, "Okay, Ann, bye." I was
But
like,
God.
I'm going to get,
Yeah,
but
but
God.
God.
I mean, honestly,
Wow.
I didn't know at the time I was going to continue to say yes. But at some point after that conversation with Ann, after that conversation with God, I had to make a decision. And I slowly began, after talking to him a few more times, I made the decision to let it be one more chance. And I did. We slowly began to talk more. We went, I visited him on his visitation. I still remember that very first time. He was calling me in anticipation where I was, and I was at this certain exit. He knew I was 20 minutes away, and I showed up. I mean, it's just like a dream. But it was so good. I mean, I was still guarded. Do not get me wrong. And I did not have, I had zero trust in him. But I showed up, and I showed up for him, and I showed up for our marriage. And it was a long process, but at some point in his recovery, he was asked to be on staff, or at least intern. I think he was in an internship. And then they said, "You know what? I really think God's working on your life, and I want you to take a full-time staff position." But I was in Knoxville. Go Vols. I love Knoxville. I mean, that's just where I was born and raised. I love Knoxville. But I was not moving. And he knew that. So he calls me. He goes, "Kate, I need to tell you something. They've asked me to be on staff." And I gave them that I'm going to pray for it for 3 days answer.
Yes.
The church answer.
Yes.
And so I said, "Okay, but no." And so I was like, "This is going to be a no." Yeah. But I'll pray for it because you told them you would. And so I prayed for it. And I said, "God, if you want me to, please say no. Move to Middle Tennessee, please say no. I will do it.
But
and I will
please say
follow
no."
you, but please say no." And I had that. That's where my heart was, essentially. Joking aside, I just didn't want to move. My family was in Knoxville. The safe place was in Knoxville. The guy who had lied to me was in Middle Tennessee. I knew there was a change, but I didn't know about that much of a change, right? And so 2 days into the prayer, my boss comes to me, and she came in, and she kind of knew my story a little bit, but her higher ups had come to her and asked if I would communicate this. And she comes busting through the door, and she goes, "Katie," she said, "there is a promotion that is on the table." And she said, "But the thing is, it's in Middle Tennessee that you would
Stop.
have." Yes. It's in Middle Tennessee. It's in Middle Tennessee where Adam's at, is what she said. And I said, "Okay." I was like, "Fine." And it was just so good. I mean, obviously, right? I mean,
There's
obviously,
no
right?
other. Yeah.
So, I mean, I said yes.
Yeah.
And had to tell my parents that too.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, they gave me like a free apartment essentially to move and a promotion. I mean, it was like a yes, right? So we moved in this tiny 1-bedroom apartment. I mean, I was just like giving it to God. I was like, "God, this is your life. I'm just saying, yes, you do with it what you will. So we moved in together as soon as I moved up here. I mean, fresh out of starting his job.
Scary.
Yeah, I mean, it was just so, I was so
Yeah.
scared, girl. I mean, I just was so scared.
How did you begin to trust him?
Yeah, so
when-
that's such a good question right here, because I didn't at all at first. And that is one of the biggest questions that I get from people who have loved ones. How did you begin to trust Adam?
Yeah.
Like, because I do wholeheartedly now, I will say that. But back then, I had to, I mean, I literally almost wrote out a contract for him. I did. And people like are like, you did what? Yeah, and he signed it, y'all. And I did. But like, I mean, down to he got cash only.
Yep.
He brought me the receipts to everything he bought, down to a
Same.
water bottle.
Yeah.
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 Brought me receipts for the cash only at 30 something years old, might I add you.
Amen, sister.
And we had drug tests upon drug tests in my house, and he was subject to those at my discretion and without hesitation. Because once he has that hesitation to take a drug test, that triggers
Immediately.
right?
Yep.
So, yeah. So I mean, I did things that were such a helicopter spouse,
Yeah.
but I had to for my own
You did.
healing.
And it was accountability.
Yeah, and it was accountability for him.
know?
I had to for my own healing.
Yeah.
But this is the thing. Okay, so I had a lot of things written down, and you can, if you're listening, have those other things that would make you feel best for you. Mine was the money thing, because that was something that was big on trust for us.
Yeah.
The drug test thing was big for us. But you have to, at some point, release
Yes, you do.
that from them.
Yeah.
Because that's a big one. These guys or girls, for us it's men and at S2L. For these guys getting out, they can't feel like they're in bondage to you for the rest of their life when they know they've been free from Christ.
That's right.
Right?
It's so good.
So, yeah, they have to earn back your trust,
Yep.
right? But they have to feel like that there's a path to
Yep.
freedom from
All of it.
addiction.
Yep.
All of it.
Yep.
You included.
Yeah.
And so you've got to decide for yourself when that begins. For me, it's daunting. I know what I'm going to say. It was years.
Us too. Us
Right.
too.
Okay. So for some people, it might not be that long,
Yeah.
depending on the severity of it, depending on what they're doing and how you feel. But for me, it was years. It was
Yeah.
years that it took for me to get to a place where I truly never even think about the addiction.
Yes, it's true. And we'll do a topical one on this, but
Yeah.
I remember calling
Yeah.
her one weekend. John was going back to his hometown, which is a trigger. And Katie told me there's different levels to trust that you will achieve and you will get to. And now I know what she was talking about that
Yeah.
day, because their walk is longer than ours.
Yeah.
And she's right. I mean, that trust comes after those seasons.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. So that's where I was at with the whole trust thing. But I'm going to bring it back around to what Anne said about giving him one more chance, right? Because that's a big part of my story that I didn't even realize I had until I was really seeking God in this testimony. But that one chance, she said, if you give him one more chance, that one chance, I'm going to tell you what this turned into. He has moved into full-time ministry. He is now the head pastor and CEO of S2L. He has seen thousands of men walk in freedom and witness to thousands of men walking in freedom. We have two beautiful children. Yes. Eli and Ella. We have that family that I dreamed of for so long. It just took us a path to get there.
That's right.
And God is using it. God is using it, and He's using it in this podcast. And I hope that you all found encouragement in my story. because I love my story. Like you said, like I do. I hate addiction. I hate it. It is of the devil, but it has brought so much sweetness to my marriage, and it has brought so much fulfillment in my family. It has given Adam a purpose, and he loves these men, and he loves the ministry, and I'm so grateful to be a part of it. So that's
huge.
a little bit about
I
me.
love that.
Yeah.
And I just want to encourage you, just even in hearing that, because where Katie said yes and kept walking, it's crazy. We have so many similarities, but I too had a huge business 7 hours away. And John was like, hey, I'm staying up here. Like, you can come or you don't have to, but this is what I'm called to. And it took me saying yes. And so I know Katie and I've talked about everybody has a different story, but if you have anything in your heart and desire to say yes to fighting for these people, do it.
Yeah.
Because I promise it comes out with a beauty and a grace and a walk unlike anything you could ever experience. But I want to thank you for sharing and being vulnerable. And your story is just so motivating, and just to hear who Adam is, and just what Adam and you guys have been so special to us in our walk. Because of Adam's addiction, we're now free in addiction. And so that is so huge. And like, we thank you guys for that and what you are.
I love you.
And for your story of addiction. I love you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you guys for joining us today, and we will see you on the next one.